Welcome, Louise Walker, to the OneSpaceLove show. It's such a pleasure to have you here and here in the Sydney studio. So nice to have you. You're not actually from Sydney. You travelled down from Byron. Well, you were on a little bit of a tour, but you've come through from Byron and originally from...
Yeah, originally from England, so southeast London, Kent. Yeah.
Well, I look forward to hear little weaves of stories of how the path has taken you to Australia. And welcome to this hot day in Sydney. It's a very hot day and very hot here in the studio. But I always start the show by asking my guests, could you introduce yourself by answering the statement, I am?
Beautiful. I am love. I'm awareness. I'm courage.
Thank you. I love that. That is beautiful. And that you actually are a developmental coach. And I want to know more about that, and also hold space for courage for people to share events with sharing courage and sharing their stories of how they came to be courageous. So we've got lots to talk about today. Take us back to the beginning, like to where you found your interest to be on this path of this.
Yeah, it definitely was when I first landed in Australia.
Okay.
Which was about 18 years ago. I came over here with my events and marketing job. I had no idea of the profound awakening that was going to happen in these beautiful healing lands. And I came over and I was in the events marketing world in very busy environments. And I suffered a lot from stress and burnout. So essentially I got on this path through being pushed by pain.
And what city did you land in?
In Sydney.
Okay.
Yeah, I came over to Sydney. And loved it, but also just wasn't able to connect in with myself and look after myself. Didn't know how to. And I discovered meditation was my first step into working on myself and stopping this constant stream of negative thinking and stress. And then yoga, Reiki healing. And then I got my first coach. And everything just started to change after maybe about the third session, when I suddenly realized the magic of being asked these deliciously uncomfortable questions that empowered me to look at life differently and realize how I was creating my own reality with my thinking. And it was just one of those wake up moments.
And are you able to share, like, was that a key person on your path that gave you these life coaching? Like,
I would say there's been so many.
Yeah.
He was my first coach and I've had so many coaches since. So there was one particular conversation I had with my first coach that really woke me up. And I was telling him, in victim at the time, about how stressful my job was. And he said to me, Louise, why do you choose to be stressed? I looked at him and I thought, what an idiot. I said, I don't choose. You should see my to-do list and meet my boss. And he just asked me the same question again. And on the third time he asked me it, I had a moment of realization that what he was pointing to was that the stress that I was experiencing was actually an internal creation, and it didn't actually exist out there in the job and the to-do list. And in that moment, I realized how powerful I was and how I thought really, really did demonstrate or create my reality. So, a big moment.
I often find that when people find these little nuggets and these little teachers that they can put in their little toolbox or their medicine bag, where did you seek? You were saying you did meditation. Did you go to a local yoga studio? Did you go online? Because I find these are the moments where we can inspire others to understand the little simple nudges. Or were you getting nudged by spirit, Yeah,
there was a few nudges. I didn't really listen until they were like literally kicking me up the bum, to be fair.
Yeah.
And I worked in a very male-dominated media industry, and there was one lady, her name was Carmen, who worked in strategy, and she used to walk around really calmly, and I always felt super stressed at work. And one day I asked her in the lunchroom, I said, Carmen, how come you're always so chilled? And she said, I meditate. And I was like, I didn't even know what that word meant. And she said, if you want to, you can come along and learn. There's like an intro night. So I went along and had the first experience, and it went from there.
What was the meditation?
It was actually Vedic meditation. So it's when we learn with a mantra and Gary Goro.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was in like someone's house in Bondi. It was all sort of underground, and it felt very mystical and magical. And I learned with him. I got initiated through him, and
and he's up in Byron now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're still following through with that? as a practice?
Yes, I now have all different techniques that I've learnt with meditation, and it just depends what I need in the moment. I've recently spent some time with Rupert Spiro in England, and he teaches meditation, which essentially is just being. So there's no guidance, there's no breath, there's no mantra, there's nothing.
I was talking to a guest this week about that, because I think it gets to a point when you get beyond the guided meditation, and then what? So it's constant evolving, isn't it? And you must have that with your clients, of constant being present to the constant evolving and listening and being aware of what you're being moved towards. It's like you're flowing in a river.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so what did it take for you to really shift out of that, the busyness and the stress and the work, you're saying, like, to actually follow a purpose, follow your path?
Yeah, it took many, many, many lessons and falling down the same pothole many, many times.
Rabbit hole.
Same rabbit hole, same pothole, yeah. And I still have the experience sometimes now, even that I now run my coaching business, my retreats business. I'll still get really busy and I'll notice the stress arise, but I have a very different relationship with it now. So, it took me really owning my path and owning how I speak to myself, how I speak to others, how I show up, how I think, how I feel, and realizing that I actually get to choose. And working with many coaches that help me developmentally to grow and to really recognize and become the witnesser of myself. And then have those moments where I recognize the old stressful thinking running and realize that actually I can choose in those moments to keep thinking the same thinking, or I can set myself free. Because really the developmental coaching is about broadening our perspectives and becoming more flexible in our thinking. So rather than being stuck in old thinking patterns, it was recognizing when they're playing out, zooming out, witnessing them, and in that moment of pause, choosing a different way to be.
And are there other modalities that you touched on? Reiki, meditation, and then the coaching? There's some other qualifications that you have, and you must bring them into your coaching. Where did they come along the path?
Yes, I'm a trained yin yoga teacher and a hatha vinyasa yoga teacher, meditation facilitator. I don't do with Reiki, that's something I just do personally for friends and family. The meditation and yoga weave into my one-on-one immersion programs that people I work with get meditation recordings sent to them in between our coaching sessions that are applicable to whatever has come up in the session. And I also provide yoga videos. But the crux of my work these days is the developmental coaching and all the different training I've done over the last 10, 11 years to get me to the point I'm at with the one-on-one.
And what would you say are some of the, one of the things with coaching is that busy mind. So what would be one of the things that you would be sharing with the clients around that, around a tool that they could help to move through that?
Yeah, I mean, for so many of them, the first step is to bring awareness to the busy mind.
Yes.
So often they're not actually aware of it. They're just in the thinking. And I use the analogy that many of us can be in this river of thinking where we're pulled along by our thoughts, and it's one thought after another, and it's the beta brain is on from the minute people wake up when they go to bed.
Yeah.
So I say to them, imagine that you're stepping out of the river of thinking, standing on the grassy bank and looking back at your thoughts. And that can be really profound as people realize that actually I'm not my thoughts, they're pulses of energy, and I can witness them. And with that witnessing and then understanding as we unravel in the coaching sessions why these thought patterns are there, what's driving them. Because every thought we have, there's a positive intention driving it. And often we run these thoughts that are a result of something that happened in childhood. It might be a protection mechanism, for example. And we don't realize that. And so we run the thoughts thinking it's protecting us until they work with someone like myself and we unravel that and they go, actually, doing the opposite of protecting me. And that's when there's a aha moment and there's a moment of choice to choose to think differently. And then we'll, in the session, re-strategize what might be a new way to think.
Because they're, often trauma can be the hooks that hook us into those behaviours. And when you have clients that you come across that have that deep trauma, do you have, methods that you support them with to help them unlock? Some of them, those thought patterns can be really stuck.
Yeah, I mean, that there can be a belief that they're really stuck, and there can be a reason, a positive intention again, as to why one particular event is still being referred back to. So we look at what's the positive intention of you referring back to that event. They understand why they're bringing that past experience forward into the present moment is one part. And the other thing I would say is that we are, as human beings, wired to experience trauma. We all experience that, like even just being birthed into this world, whether we come through the tummy or the vaginal canal, we experience trauma. And so my experience isn't to give it too much of a label, but look at what's the meaning we're making around what's happened.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's when there's the freedom. Because usually it's the meaning that's unresourceful. The experience happened back there, but how is the human being in this moment still processing it or still attaching meaning to it?
Yeah, because I was going to ask you on freedom, what is the secret of freedom? You mentioned, finding freedom and that it's all it's accessible to us all.
Yeah. I mean, two different things. One is flexibility in thinking.
Okay.
So rather than being had by your thinking, it's recognizing that there's other ways to think. And another is, which is really the same point, but just spoken differently, is broadening perspectives. So the broader perspective we can have on a situation, the more freedom we have in that situation to respond rather than react. So as an example, say a client is really struggling with a relationship in their life, say with their boss, but they're only seeing it from their personal perspective. Some of the work we'll do is to get to them to see that experience from their boss's shoes. So they get to step into the shoes and see themselves and catch how the other person might be thinking and feeling. We'll get them to look at the experience objectively, like what are the facts of the situation if you look at it as a fly on the wall. And then we'll also look at it systemically, so zooming right out and look at what else is going on, like bigger picture scenario, what's happening economically, what's happening in that workplace, and that workplace is more senior partner, and look bigger and bigger. And then these different perspectives mean that the challenge starts to look different, and nothing's changed. It's just that there's more perspectives, and the person has a higher level of awareness which didn't have before. It's really powerful stuff.
I mean, I can just relate it to my own life. I love that, and I always say, like, when you can pull yourself out and be above it and look at it from a higher perspective, looking at it as a bigger picture, then you can make it not so focused and engulfed in it and trapped in it. You do become more free because you realize you're part of that void and that expansiveness and the oneness, and takes you out of the me.
Yes, exactly. It takes
and
that
the
out,
I.
making it so personal. Yeah. And normally there's the egoic structure of the personality that can be maybe attached to being right, maybe attached to being in control, whatever is running, and starting to recognize that we're not that structure. That's a massive part of the freedom. It's to recognize I'm not my identity. I'm actually, divine essence beyond all of that. And this identity, this personality is learned, essentially.
On what part of your path did you then get curious about sharing people's stories of courage? Where did that moment happen for you?
I think it's probably been with me since I was very young, when I learned about how my father David was killed, and the fact that he won bravery awards and was acknowledged for his courage in all of the newspapers. There was always a part of me that was saddened that this story was kind of in a box with medals and newspaper clippings and never was to see the light of day, and wasn't really spoken about a lot while I was growing up.
So take us back. Your father, you grew up in England.
Yeah.
And what did your father do?
My father was an accountant. So I was only 3 weeks old when he was killed and died saving 2 women's lives.
3 weeks old?
Just 3 weeks old.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was huge at the time, and it's something that I share about more in the Circle of Courage events. Luckily, my beautiful mum, Penny, met my dad, who brought me up, Robin Walker, who's also a hero in his own right. Because when my mum was 39, she had asthma, and one day a bad asthma attack turned into a heart attack and she passed. And my dad, Robin, chose to bring me, my sister Dawn up, and also my sister Heather up by himself, aged just 29, and decided to keep us together. And yeah, that would have been huge for him. Yeah, so both my fathers are heroes, and my mother as well, after my father David was killed, had to carry on with a 3-week-old and a 3-year-old. And, you know, all of the press. And she went to see the Queen, and they had tea with the Queen. It was, there was a lot for her to deal with.
Because he saved 2 people's lives and died in that action. That is a huge story of courage, and a human that, you know, to have had so much heart to have put himself behind another's need, or it sounds like people he didn't even know needs.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, nobody else on the street went to help when there was these blood-curdling cries in the middle of the night. But he went, he heard the call. Yeah, and whether it was wrong or right to do that, it just was what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's coming to that acceptance, isn't it?
Yeah, which has been a big part of my personal journey, to radically, fully accept the early death of both of my blood parents.
Because how old were you when your mother passed?
I was just 8. Yeah.
I mean, I have 4 children, but I have 11 or 10-year-olds going on 11. But I know, you know, if they had lost me at this age or younger, it's a very young age to lose mother.
Yeah.
Or a father. Yeah.
I'm very lucky. My dad, Robin, actually remarried, and I have a beautiful stepmother, Gail. He used to be our family doctor. He also knew my mum, and she's beautiful. So been very blessed in so many ways as well.
So much silver lining. And your sister's in London?
Yeah, they both live in, one lives by the ocean down in Hastings, and one lives in Kent with all the rest of my family.
Oh, beautiful.
And I've also got 3 stepbrothers. So yeah, it's a big fun family.
So now it's a big family, yeah. But you realise then that you were touched by a story of courage, and it must have been something, you know, emerging. Often I say that the seeds are planted very early, and then it's how we tend to those seeds so that they may grow and be shared for a greater good for humanity. And it feels like you really have stepped into that. What were some of the moments along the path that nudged, as I say, just keep pushing you to share other people's stories of bravery and courage?
Yeah, I mean, let me just sit with that question for a moment. I think it's probably more accurate to say, for me, what was it that meant that I kept making courageous decisions for myself? Because it's only really been recently that I've been putting other people's stories in.
Yeah.
It's probably more that what happened when I was younger meant that I lived in a certain way, which was the belief that life was short.
Yeah, that often happens, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I've been a real go-getter, which has been in some ways wonderful for things I've done and where I've been and my work, but also hasn't been good for my body, my spirit, when I've been like burnt out and pushing. Yes, it was only actually a few months ago that the first Circle of Courage with guest speakers actually launched. And this is still relatively new at the moment, though there's so much wonderful energy. I've got lists of people that want to share their stories. And one of the things I feel very passionate about is, you know, there's a saying, don't die with the music in you.
Absolutely.
Like, don't
I love
die
that.
with the story in you. And how many, it doesn't have to be stories like my father that made the papers and he was seen as a hero. It can be everyday acts of courage, just showing up, you know, in our humanity, in our vulnerability, not needing things to be perfect. And every single person has a story of courage. We all have to be courageous to get this far in the classroom of life.
Absolutely. Just you being able to keep going and not be stuck in victim. I've lost both my parents, and go down a real spiral of life is too hard. You chose to be courageous, and you chose to know life is short. I'm going to make the most of it. As Louise Walker. And now coming over to Australia and creating a life here, I mean, I was chatting with an artist who is away from family and I think he's been here almost 2 decades and started a family living in Byron. And it does take a lot of courage to leave where your familiarity of, you know, upbringing and surroundings and community. So in itself, what do you think helped you to stay here in Australia? What do you love about it?
It's a really good question. It was funny, so many times I thought about going back.
Yeah.
And then I'd get another job another visa, fall in love. And Australia just kept drawing me back. And I know that if I hadn't moved, I wouldn't be doing the work I'm doing now. And I wouldn't have experienced the growth I don't believe that I have, and had access to sort of the teachers and even the influence of the East in Australia as well. Like yoga is so huge out here, and it's slowly growing in England. Like it's bigger in England now, but when I first moved here, it was not common at all back home. Yeah, and I love the people here. When I first came backpacking here when I was 21, I just remember people saying, no worries. And it felt so different from the experience in England.
Yeah.
And I was just, my system was relaxing, and I felt this hope and possibility, and just loved the beaches and the open spaces. Yeah.
And when you talk about this experience coming here and being in a corporate job, I guess, and understanding the busyness and then learning how to slow down, would you say that you move through, I guess, an awakening of itself? And was there moments where you were feeling that you were guided and pushed onto the direction of your purpose and your path?
Yeah, definitely. There's been some wonderful figures that have come in that have maybe seen my potential or seen me when I didn't see myself.
Yeah.
One particular man who's now a beautiful friend, Mark Phillips, who's an acupuncturist in Double Bay. I used to have acupuncture with him, and then one day I was plucked up the courage to say to him, could I please maybe use your space and teach yoga, meditation and coach? And his space was beautiful, and I was terrified. And he said to me, yes, I saw that you were going to do this when I first met you, and actually you don't have to pay me for the first few months. I really want to support you. And he's actually living up north of Byron at the moment, and is still a really dear friend. But having people that see you and help you along the way, or help me along the way, has been really instrumental. I also work with some incredible mentors from the coaching room. I've done all my coach training with them the last 10 years, and they've gone over and above to help me, giving me feedback and a good ego bashing occasionally. It's been, I'm very grateful.
What I love that. I love acupuncture, and I often acknowledge the people along my path that have, when I have that self-doubt. Let's talk about self-doubt, because it is a big one that you must have with your clients. It comes up, and we all have it. People can say, I don't know how she does it, but behind the scenes, self-doubt comes up for many of us, and I'm sure it still comes up for you. So having people that take time to see you and acknowledge you is so, I welcome it, and I'm so grateful for those people in my lives. How would you say, I guess, are some tools to help your clients with self-doubt?
Self-doubt's interesting because it can be useful. And it can also be self-sabotage. So it's always about working that out, first of all. Okay. Is this actually moving me towards away from what I want? And then when we realize that it's actually not helpful for us, it's also looking at what is driving that. So what's the positive intention? What am I trying to achieve with the self-doubt? There's a bit of a head twister question, but what can often happen, like, for example, a client may say, what I can see is I'm actually self-doubting, because the more I self-doubt, the more I get to hide and not really step into my full power. So it's actually, I'm trying to protect myself.
Okay.
And then I'll say, well, protect yourself from what?
Yeah. Let's unpack that. Yeah.
Exactly. And then that's when sometimes the penny drops. But it's kind of doing the opposite. The self-doubt is actually not protecting. It's stopping you from, it's actually harmful for you, stopping you from stepping into your full power and fully being seen and doing what you're here for.
Absolutely. And what is procrastination? How would you work with procrastination?
Again, it would be looking at what is driving that.
Okay.
And I'd ask the client, how do you do procrastination? I'd get them to give me a full example of how they do it. Because very easy to say, I just procrastinate. Okay, well, what does that mean? Because every person that uses the word has a different meaning, different reference point to it. So getting them to really break it down and see how they do it. How do they think it? How does it show up? How are they choosing it? And then what's driving it? What are they hoping to achieve unconsciously with the procrastination? And then, well, are you achieving that? And normally they say, I'm not achieving. what's running unconsciously behind this procrastination. So it's really fascinating. It's always about looking at, rather than looking into the story of the procrastination, going into the content of it. And we do look at examples, of course. It's looking at what's running unconsciously behind it, holding it in place. Now, what are the belief systems, and what are the belief systems behind those belief systems, and really unraveling all of the thinking.
That is a new way to look at things, because I haven't looked at it that way, and I think that's really helpful for the listeners. Yeah. I'm a believer that people can change. What is your thought on that when you find with clients?
I would say to them, what is it within you that needs them to change? Because everybody that I coach notices their relationships with other people change. It's because they've changed within themselves. And if we put intentionality and energy into making someone else change, it's often a waste of our energy.
Yes.
Because how they think, feel, say, do is 100% up to them. We might have a bit of an influence occasionally, but they get to choose. And so when we shift the attention back to ourselves and our own, we call them our 4 personal powers. How am I thinking, feeling, saying, and doing in this moment? And recognizing, we can model and go first in a more, maybe a more evolved way to show up, or a more responsible way. Or maybe we respond rather than react with that person. And then when we're showing up differently, they can't show up the same way.
Totally.
It just literally doesn't work.
Totally. I've experienced this. And I guess I totally have experienced that. And I feel like if we could all be accountable and take responsibility, there's a lot of reactions, isn't there? And there's a lot of triggers and charges, rather than us all just working on ourselves and going within. And yeah, I guess I'm definitely not feeling it is anyone's job to change anyone, but I do believe that people can change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I see it every single day.
I see it too.
With my work.
Yeah.
And there has to be a readiness.
Yes.
For example, I don't work with anybody that isn't ready. If someone sends with their partner and the partner's not keen, I don't coach them. Because there's no point unless there's a readiness and a hunger.
There has to be a willingness and a readiness. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I find I'm a big lover of I'm passionate about kinesiology and acupuncture and all these modalities, cranial osteopathy, and I find it's not my role to invite others to say, this will help you, this will make a change because it's made a difference in my life. But someone has to be willing, otherwise it won't work. It's a big one.
And you mentioned reactions before, which are really interesting, because this is a big one for the clients, for most humans, right? And if you look at the word reaction, it's reacting. So what happens is we get stuck in these habitual patterns. Often they're patterns that have been formed in childhood that we're still running in adult years. And if we're not aware of how we react and have that higher awareness of it, we're just asleep to doing the same behaviors, expecting something to change. So with the flexibility of thinking and the different perceptions and the freedom I was speaking about, that is when we get to respond in context rather than react.
I got to look at one of your sharings about triggers, and there were some tips that you shared. Would you be able to share that with the listeners?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the three tips were around pausing, self-inquiry, and ownership. So essentially, when we experience trigger, recognizing the experience in our body. And so having a moment to experience a trigger, and even saying to somebody, I'm just triggered at the moment. Can I have a pause moment if you need to? And even when you name it into the space like that, you immediately become objective to it rather than just being in the trigger and subject to it. So this pause moment between stimulus and response is extremely powerful. And it's just having the self-ownership to actually allow that for self. And then the second part, once you do pause, is some self-inquiry. So this is when you actually get to have a look at what is actually going on for me. So often when we're triggered, it can be quite a strong reaction in relation to the actual event. And so it's looking at what has happened in my past that's coming into play now that means I'm triggered. Might be a self-inquiry. Or what am I making their behavior or language mean, which means I'm having this trigger? Am I mind reading that they actually mean something that they don't? And it's just a chance to self-reflect and ask yourself some questions. Even ask yourself, is this trigger actually in proportion to what's happening out there? And it's not about criticizing self. It's just about having that judgment moment.
That awareness.
Exactly.
Self-awareness.
Yeah. And then also from that, owning it. So there's something about owning the trigger rather than saying, you've made me so angry, you made me so triggered.
And that's and that's another point about, it must come up about learning not to blame.
Absolutely. Because when we point and blame another for a trigger, we're not owning it, because that person, you could say, can't trigger you. You can trigger yourself in the face of them would be more correct or a cleaner way to say it. And it's not to say that somebody else can't have an influence, but it's so subjective. So say Dave, for example, I'm triggered in the face of him, but my sister might be standing next to me and what Dave says doesn't trigger her at all. So it's recognizing it's the meaning I'm bringing to Dave's words and behaviors that I'm getting triggered by.
I had this experience with a friend and a Dave, and the Dave said something in front of my children, and the next day my friend said, I was really triggered by this comment, and mentioned what her trigger was. And I was like, I didn't see it in that perspective at all. I saw it as quite playful and fun, and nothing triggered me. I said, where did that come from? And then she recognized it had come from her father and from childhood. And is that what you're suggesting?
Exactly. Yeah. There'll be an experience in the past that hasn't been resolved.
Okay.
It's the meaning that you've attached to it. I think the example I gave in the blog was, you're dating someone and you ask them to come to your grandma's funeral with you, and your partner says, oh, sorry, I can't make it because I've got something important on at work. And because 10 years ago, your boyfriend didn't once show up and take you to the prom, that's a deep wound for you, someone not showing up on an important date. And so the response is, prolific. But actually, when there's some self-inquiry and some pause, you realize it's actually not so much about that. It's about something in the past that hasn't been resolved just yet, that's still sitting in our system, which the past experience gets triggered and comes into the present moment.
Oh my gosh. And this is what you help your clients with? So many people need this.
Yeah. Well, it's so empowering to understand why we think and react and feel the way we do.
I think one of the things that really linked my heart to you on a phone conversation we had in relation to your events that you were talking and sharing with me about circles of courage was, I shared a little bit how, my circumstances and how, I had a choice whether to be stuck in that and like the shit story, the shit sandwich, and to be a victim or to choose to be empowered by that story. And how do you find that you get that a lot with your clients, that they're able to find ways to move out of victim into their truth, into their power?
Yeah.
Do you want to share a bit about that? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when I will lovingly ask, are you in victim at the moment? That can be quite challenging. But what's really beautiful is then to understand, what's the positive intention about running victim? Okay. What do you get from it? And often the answer might be along the lines of, well, when I'm in victim, I don't have to take full responsibility for my part in this because it's their fault, or it's life's fault, or it's that situation, that person's fault.
That blame again.
Exactly. Yeah. So victim is in blame. They're in the poor me story, and they're in disempowered.
Yes.
But there's always a positive intention driving it. And then when we realize, actually, it's not actually helping me. Being in blame isn't making me more powerful, isn't helping how I think and feel and how I show up in the world and the results that I get. That's when there's another choice. How do we reframe that? What other role can I play? How can I step out of that, look back at myself with love and, have compassion for that part of self that's run victim for so long? And maybe at one point when they were younger, it was useful because they got extra attention from somebody, for example.
By being in that victim.
Yeah. And there's the Cartman's drama triangle. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. With the victim, rescuer and persecutor. And these are the three roles that are played when we're not taking full responsibility in our lives. When we're in persecutor, we're blaming someone else. And when we're in rescuer, we're trying to rescue people who are in the victim story. And these roles all play into each other. So I work with that as well with my clients. It's a model of like social interaction. Yeah.
And you work with the anagrams.
And the Enneagram.
Enneagrams.
Yes. Yeah. So Brandon Bays works with it. There's so many different teachers that work with the Enneagram.
So where did this come into your journey? Yeah.
So the Enneagram came into my journey probably about 10 years ago, in my first few months of learning about coaching.
Okay.
I went to an Enneagram workshop and they the presenter explained the 9 different personality types that form the Enneagram. I listened to all of them and I thought, as long as I'm not the type 3, that's fine.
What was type 3?
The one that I am. So, which I've made peace with now. But I went up to the presenter and it was actually Jay Headley from the coaching room I mentioned before. And said to him, what am I? He was like, you're a bloody 3, an achiever. And I was like, really? He went, just look at yourself. And I was like all, suited up. Everything was all perfect. It was very much about the image for me and self-worth attached to productivity, which still runs now, but I'm now able to witness that. So yeah, the Enneagram's been a huge personal journey, and I love sharing it with everyone that I work with, one-on-one coaching, and also do Enneagram retreats.
Oh, and tell us about your retreats.
Yes, yeah, so the Enneagram retreats are just 1 days. I do them on the Central Coast and Byron in really beautiful locations deep in nature. And I'll have between 12 and 15 people that arrive. They've done their tests before and they show up to learn about their type as well as the other types. And what's so beautiful about during the day is that everybody that arrives starts to understand how every single person has such a different view of reality according to their personality. And it opens up some really wonderful things. So, for example, a type 6 is the loyalist, and they can often run some worst case scenario and not trust. I had a type 6 that arrived once and he was kind of closed and untrusting and sort of avoiding eye contact. And he went through the whole experience of the day, and he came up to me at the end of the day and he had tears in his eyes and he said, I never understood before or realized that people kind of thought differently to me. It's just opened my heart to humanity and I just can't thank you enough. And he just opened and cracked because he'd understood that his view was only one of the 9 views.
9 views, yeah.
And not everyone thought like him. So it's a really powerful day because we get to try out different situations like conflict and look at how do all the different 9 types approach conflict. How do they experience that? And let people workshop together, and then they come back and we have shares and they're like, wow, the type 2, the helper, approaches conflict so differently from the type 8, which is the challenger. The type 8 will be, right in there. They love conflict. They're happy with it. And the type 2 will be trying to make sure that everyone's okay and maintain relationships, for example.
Love that we got to share that.
Yeah.
So helpful. And it feels like there's so many things in your little medicine bag that you get to share with your clients. What do you get out of working with clients? What do you've shared that there's, I just thought, let's share with the listeners.
So many things. I mean, I'm deeply touched by humanity. I'm deeply touched by every human that courageously sits in front of me and shares their truth. I'm deeply moved when people drop the mask and they develop this safe relationship with me. Because the coaching might not necessarily feel safe because they're out of their comfort zone, asking questions they haven't asked before. But there's a deep respect and trust in the space that we create. And witnessing the beautiful humans that work with me experience that, and the relationships that we build is one of the many things I get out of that. When I first started, I was very attached to results, and I've let that go now. So the work I do isn't about results. It's about evolution and transformation on the inside, as opposed to I want to lose weight or make more money. Like, those things naturally happen anyway, but we don't focus on them. It's more of an evolution of the human being, and letting go of the stuff that doesn't serve, and pulling upon resources on the inside that have always been there, but have just been forgotten about. So coaching is the art of facilitation. So I facilitate them to reconnect with their potential, their purpose, their truth.
Their greatness.
Their greatness.
We all have it, don't we?
Every single one of us, for sure.
What is your feeling on, relationships? Because people can get lost in that love and get lost in the attachment, and how you just explained it is beautiful. How did you get there to have that awareness and that understanding that we're 2 separate beings and then we come together in union with our greatness?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's only been in this relationship that I've ever truly had that experience where I'm deeply in love, but the attachment is so minimal. There's a real freedom because of maybe the developmental stage both of us are at.
Yeah.
There's a real love there without any sense of ownership, or I need your love to feel complete or good enough. Yeah, it's been quite a profound experience.
It's a game changer, isn't it, when you can come to that with someone else?
Yeah.
Are there any tips that you would say you've taken from past relationships that have really helped you to have this awareness? Or do you think it really depends on who the person you've attracted and that you attract that when you're in that alignment?
I mean, I would say after every relationship, there's definitely make sure that we really sit with what were the lessons I got from that relationship? Yeah. How did I show up? I can see in reflection wasn't of best service to them or to myself. And to take that time to really be in that reflection before moving to the next one. I used to have a pattern of not having enough time in between and actually really having time to come back to self, to finding our center and to be genuinely happy within ourselves. So when we're in partnership or, seeking or open to partnership, that it's not from a need.
Absolutely.
That I'm literally choosing to be with someone because it's a choice and it makes my life even better, but it doesn't make me complete or whole. I am that complete and whole without the partner.
I really feel the more we can be invited to find our own alignment, our own center, and then rather than seeking that on the outside from another.
Yeah. And the center feels like, for me, it feels my solar plexus, that point of inner personal power. It's like back to that part. It's not in the mind. It's not a thought. It's actually an embodied experience.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. And Ethan shares a static dance. Is it up in Byron?
He does, yeah. It's called Sundance. And every Sunday morning, we will be there. From 10 till 12. And the experience is very beautiful. It's a really curated 2 hours of music that are two waves. So start off very slowly meditative, move to a peak and then drop down. And here's a wonderful following. Some of the Byron community come to almost every weekend and people come from far and wide to come and dance with us. And it's so healing. We get to dance without speaking. So it's held in sacred space. We have an altar and we all have chai afterwards. Like 100 people share a lovely chai afterwards and connect. That sense of community is so important.
And where can people point over to learn more about that?
Yeah, I think if you just Google Sundance Ecstatic Dance, there's a whole website that's always got the details. And there's also a Facebook group. Yeah.
Beautiful. And I love how all the communities are connected. What is community to you?
Community to me is love and support and a sense of recognizing self in another and no one thinking they're any better than anybody else, but, pulling together, holding each other accountable, being there in the good and the bad times and having fun. Like I feel like it's so important to remember to have fun as well as doing the deep developmental work. It's also the lightness and the joy of sharing our humanity.
Yeah, beautifully said. What would you want to share on forgiveness?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. I've worked with many clients that have said to me at the beginning, I could never forgive this person.
Yes, that's why I thought I'd bring it up because I find there's a lot of resistance and it's a word that's used a lot, but there can be a lot of resistance with big things. I just can't forgive that.
Yeah. And so what we'll often look at is what do you believe not forgiving is giving you? And often what they believe, and this is a belief and we normally unravel this, is that if they don't forgive, the other person is somehow suffering and they're paying for it. And there's a beautiful quote which is said, when we don't forgive, it's like drinking the poison and expecting someone else to die.
Love that.
It's so fascinating.
Yeah.
So it comes back to the freedom again. So I had a beautiful client quite a few years ago that she could never forgive her dad. And we worked together for a couple of months and she did forgive him and had the conversation. And she realised after that how much it had been affecting her health in particular.
Yeah.
And holding her back and affecting her in so many areas of life. But she was holding on because she wanted him to pay. But actually, it was her that was paying.
Because that anger, resentment, rage, all those emotions can get stuck in our cells.
Absolutely. Yeah. Emotion.
Yeah.
The energy has to go somewhere. And often there'll be some real anger as well. And then underneath the anger, there might be some real grief that just hasn't been accessed. So a lot of the work I do is dropping my clients into their body as well, to notice where are the energy blockages and to speak to those and speak from those and move and shift that, as well as working with the mind. So very much I work with the whole body system.
And talking in light of ecstatic dance, one of the beautiful ways to shift emotion through your body, what are some other tools that you love of shifting? You know, I guess yoga is another one.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, when I practice yoga, often I'll feel energy rippling around my hands and arms as I do different poses. Also, I find shaking really useful.
That came to me, actually. Yeah. I thought she's going to say shaking.
Yeah.
I learnt that from Matu Tehuki, a beautiful artist from New Zealand that I've done many shows with. And before the show, he would go out back and he'd shake his whole body. And I was like, what are you doing? He's like, moving that energy through my body. Yeah, it's a great way.
Yeah, and it really works. Really works. Just moving the body has such a profound impact. So we sit and get stagnant and just allow it to fester. Going out, having a walk, shaking out, having a dance.
Yeah, a walk.
Yeah.
And these are all simple things you can do right now listening to us. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to an ecstatic dance, I don't have time. All these excuses, right?
Yeah. And the way we breathe is so important as well.
Absolutely.
So many of us breathe up into our chest, which stimulates, the sympathetic part of the autonomic nervous system. And actually, if we can just take a hand onto our diaphragm just below the rib cage and breathe in there like you're filling up a balloon, taking a few breaths, often I say 4x4 and 4x6, so the exhale gets lengthened. Just doing that can take us into the parasympathetic part of our autonomic nervous system, and the body starts to get flooded with the hormone DHEA, and we just start to relax and soften. So the breath, is the bridge between body and mind, because I also do meditation, mentoring and facilitation, and it all starts with the breath.
Well, we're going to finish up today talking about the circles of courage. Can you tell us what is the circle of courage? Because we've touched a little bit of it, but let's go in and give a little bit of explanation. What can they expect? And
Yeah, they're inspired by the fact that, especially with social media, there's this often, I call Facebook fake book. There's this projection that people's lives are often so perfect. And of course, we have wonderful events in our lives. But what happens in the times when actually things aren't going to plan? So the inspiration behind Circle of Courage is actually to talk to some of the painful bits in life, some of the times when we had to dig deep into internal resources and be resilient and courageous to survive, to keep going. And so the Circle of Courage is here to give voice to some of those stories that wouldn't be heard otherwise. The evenings are different every time I run them, depending where they're at and who comes and how big the circles are. I've had a 40 size circle and then 20, and the last one in the Blue Mountains. And I speak and share my very vulnerable, very personal story of courage. And normally one or two guest speakers share as well. We have a beautiful musician normally that plays and weaves their music in around the stories. And there's it's very much a participation circle. So it's not a standard audience and speaker event. There's exercises and opportunities for the circle participants to actually interact and to ask questions and to receive some guidance and maybe a bit of in the moment live coaching, and some opportunities for them to step into their courage as well. It's completely voluntary. There's no you have to. But actually, one of the frames I share is when we're in our comfort zone, there's no growth because everything is known. So the events are a loving invitation to come along and to maybe experience stepping out if you want to, if you feel ready to.
Yeah.
And one of the beautiful things is I've noticed when people leave, the lightness in their being, the shine in their eyes, the openness in their heart, the warmth in their smile, because there's been a reminder of our shared humanity, the reminder of how vulnerability is actually a strength. And, I delve quite deeply into what courage is at the event and give some different perspectives that maybe are a bit more unusual or also really potent reminders. And I regularly get people coming up to me and saying, that has actually really been very thought-provoking for me. Some of them have said they feel for them it's been enlightening. Things that they haven't heard about before have been shared, and they've got new perspectives on challenges that were seeming insurmountable, and they've left with the courage to have a conversation and to realise the power that actually they have that within them to do that. And it's so moving to witness that and to receive emails and messages from people after the event who are sharing with me some of the things they've done as a result of coming to a circle of courage.
So you've inspired them to be courageous through these events.
Well, they've inspired themselves, I would say.
That's true.
Because they've come and they've seen something in myself or someone else speaking that spoke to them.
Ignited in them.
Yeah, and they recognise they have that within them.
Yes.
But they'd forgotten, perhaps.
Because the flame is within us all, but it's almost like you just ignited that flame. Yeah.
And often people might get stuck in a holding pattern where the fear, which is essential to experience courage, we have to experience fear so we can apply courage to it. The fear becomes so huge that the courage isn't able to be accessed because there's a belief that the fear is real.
Fear is big. Fear is a big one, isn't it?
It's a big one. And also it's so subjective.
Okay.
So recognising that my fear is different to your fear. And then recognising, well, is it actually real or is it conceptual? That can be a big one, to actually really unpack it and work out with the fears that we're running, you know, what's behind them. And out of those fears, what are actually based in fact and which are based on worst case scenario, fearful thinking about the future. Because when I unpack fears with my clients, normally they'll give me their biggest, deepest fear. Then I'll say, okay, from 0 to 10, how likely is it that that's going to happen? And they'll say, probably 1. And I say, okay, and how many years has this fear stopped you moving forward? And I might be like, 40 years? Like, this is common. The fears become so big in mind that they stop us from moving forward. So when we start to unpack them, face them, turn and look at them, the fear shrinks. But the more we run from the fear, the more energy we give it and the bigger it becomes. So fascinating.
Yeah. Well, I have a few beautiful friends that have worked with you as a coach, and I've seen profound differences in their life, in their being, and how they show up. I've also had friends that have spoken at your circles of courage and who speak so highly about these events. So I very much welcome the guests to learn more about these. How can they learn more about them?
I'm going to be doing a series of Sydney events, and they're looking like they're going to be smaller community events and all across different areas of Sydney. And maybe you might be involved in one of those, Steph.
I'd love to be.
And yeah, all the information is, you can find that by my social media. So my social media hashtag's louisewalker.com.au, and that's also conveniently my website. So if you go to louisewalker.com.au and go to the events section, the Circle of Courage events are up there.
And you've also got a newsletter, people, because you send monthly newsletters, people can sign up to on the website. There's a lot of tips there. There's a lot of resources over there. So, and you can do the one-on-one coaching. You can learn more about that on your website.
Yeah, and I've also launched just recently a group offer called Courageous Conversations.
Okay.
Which is an offer for everyone that wants to experience developmental coaching. At the end of every month, I'm doing a 1 hour and 15-minute courageous group coaching call. And there's a different topic for each month. And so if you sign up, you basically put a question forward or a challenge or a situation you'd like to be coached on. And I work through with each person who's put a question forward and do some coaching with them. The group is very private. It's only held for the people that come. It's not going to be published anywhere afterwards. And it's an opportunity to experience some developmental coaching and to also witness others in their growth. We can gain so much from hearing someone else unpack something, because so many of us are really dealing with the same stuff when we scratch the surface.
So you can go over to Louise Walker's website, and I encourage you very much. This is a beautiful way to put a little foot in and learn a little bit more about what it is you share. And I hope you got so much out of today's show. Thank you for sharing so vulnerably with us and the listeners today. It's been so beautiful to share this space with you. Thank you so much for being on the OneSpaceLove show, Louise.
Thank you so much, Steph. It's been an absolute pleasure. Yeah, beautiful.
Yay!
Yay!